Welcome to the Face to Face podcast, your go-to resource for living a life of vitality, wholeness, and authenticity. I am one of your hosts, Melinda Wilson.
And I'm your other host, Kathy Little. Join us as we explore deeper connection, lasting freedom, and meaningful relationships with God, others, and your true self. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, we're actually coming to you from one of my favorite places, Lake Tahoe.
It's beautiful.
I'm
pointing behind me.
If you're listening without the video, sorry.
You might be able to hear the waves though. I don't know.
You might be able to hear the waves, and maybe you want to go and subscribe on YouTube. And anyway, we're here because we just hosted Dash Away 44 and it was amazing. We love doing these and really excited to just be partnering with Jesus to bring healing to people. But we just had that, and we've got a couple things we just want to remind you of online with the Institute.
And that is the trauma course, self-paced, 8 modules, very comprehensive, and you can go at your own pace. And it's a great introduction to learning how trauma affects people and the brain and the body. And it's a great introduction into actually working with people, working with your own self, and understanding the effects of trauma. And level 1,
yes,
our foundations course, that's what it used to be called,
yeah,
but it is level 1, and it's the introduction, but it's more than introduction to a manual approach. It's 7
it's about the
weeks,
manual approach for your life. I mean, it's
and it
helpful.
The feedback we get is it's transformational. I've never experienced anything like this. I've done other Emmanuel training, but this was so comprehensive and hands-on and personal. And so we invite you into level 1 starting
September 18th. And it's going to go for 7 weeks on Thursdays. And there's actually 2 different time frames, either midday or evening, just to make it more convenient for everybody. But it really is a great course. And you don't have to even become a practitioner. It's not, I mean, this is for your life. And then level 2 is also starting with level 1 as a prerequisite. But that's where we go into more practitioner training. But it'd be awesome to have you guys
through
join
level
us.
1. There's also other manual training. You can apply for level 2.
Yep.
Comprehensive, thorough, lots of practice with an experienced coach. We'd love to have you. Level 1 starting September 18th, and level 2, which is a 9-month program, like a school year, starting September 8th.
Go to emmanuelinstitute.com.
Yep.
Find out more.
We're very happy and honored to introduce Dr. Margaret Nagib, a psychologist, and we had a really fascinating conversation with her. We hope that we can get her back again because there was so much that we didn't get to cover.
Yeah.
But I know that you'll appreciate it.
We had a little bit of technical issue with this one, so it was a little hard. We didn't get it all in, but you're going to enjoy this one. So
talking about trauma responses and how our body and nervous system responds, what happens in our body, and how we can be more aware of what's happening in our nervous system. So here's Dr. Margaret Nagib. We're so happy to have Dr. Margaret Nagib here today, who is a psychologist and with over 20 years of experience. And I love what your website says, Dr. Margaret, helping people reclaim their identity, purpose, and passion. And really, we want to talk today so much. We were talking about how I need about 5 hours with you, but about body, mind, spirit integration. I want to talk about different trauma responses, how we can know if we're stuck in them. And if that's already 45 minutes, you can stop me. But, and maybe a little bit about spiritual bypassing. But Dr. Margaret, if you wouldn't mind just sharing with our listeners a little bit about you, first of all, so that they can hear from you for a moment.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I love all that you guys have been doing with this show and the people that you've been bringing and the discussions. And yeah, I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm from New York originally, moved to Chicago area for grad school because I really wanted to learn how to integrate faith and psychology. And so the school that I went to here in Wheaton specialized in that. And so it was this beautiful journey of not just understanding the mind and the personality, but this idea that we're inextricably linked, body and spirit, right? And so how do you help the psyche if you don't connect with the spirit and with God's spirit and even with the body? So that's been my quest for the last 20 plus years, to really help people connect with their authentic self, the essence of who they are, heal and integrate that adaptive coping part of our personality that we all have. That's very necessary. And then to ultimately to be able to go to that next level of the relationship with God, to not be afraid of uncertainty and the unknown with God, to let him take us to the above or beyond what we can ask, think, or imagine. So that's my heart. My heart is just to see people most in their authentic self, living from that place and connected to God. Yeah.
So you've been in this work for 20 years and
More
or
than
more
that.
than
Started
that.
grad school in 95. So,
Okay. What have you
yeah.
seen change over the years in regards to even Christians being able to have or being willing to have the conversation about psychology? Because I know
Yeah.
that years ago, never the twain shall meet.
Right.
And if you're a Christian, you shouldn't need psychology or counseling or even healing. I'd
Right.
love to hear what you've witnessed, sort of the evolution, if you will, of
Yeah.
Christ followers sort of changing their mind
Yeah.
about all that and how that
For
happened.
sure. Absolutely. So I've had the privilege of kind of having at least one foot in several types of Christian communities. So I grew up mostly in the evangelical Christian culture, and that is really where Christian psychology was birthed and continues to really thrive. So I would say that from my personal experience, there was never a divide. There was always this sense that they complement each other, that God created the truths of psychology
Mm.
and that they can work together really well. If you look at all the research, all the good stuff about Christian psychology, it comes from that evangelical world. But as I started going out and about and, mixing with other faith backgrounds, that's when I started noticing kind of a little bit of that divide. So there was the
Mm.
biblical counseling that didn't really love the more psychological counseling. And biblical counseling, if you don't know, is really about using scripture to understand the mind and the soul. And then I started kind of being drawn into more charismatic culture. And so what I saw there is where the evangelical culture had really solid psychology, but maybe a little weak on things of the spirit, a little afraid of the things of the spirit. The charismatic world was really strong on the things of the spirit, but a little, out of touch with
Mm.
psychology. But now in 2025, I have watched this beautiful, it's much more integrated, much more coming together. So, for example, I speak at the American Association of Christian Counselors every year. And the first time, 10 years ago, I brought in inner healing, and everybody was looking at me like, what is this? And now, because I make sure I speak on inner healing every time, because that's more that evangelical world that needs that inner healing. And now when I speak on inner healing, they go, "Are you talking about inner healing?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am." So what I see now, and God told me years ago that, Margaret, you're a bridge. You're a bridge between faith and
Mm.
psychology, and you're a bridge among denominations, right? So where spirit is lacking, you bring spirit. Where mind and other things is lacking, you bring that. And so what I'm finding now in 2025 is it feels like we're more learning from each other, working together, both inner healing and psychology, biblical counseling and psychology. Sure, there are those pockets that are still a little afraid of psychology, but they're fewer and far between in 2025.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, of course, that you have. And because I've never been in the world of psychology, but been in the world of inner healing for a couple of decades. And I love the integration because I think it does take all of us and the sort of that mind. Can we talk a little bit more about the mind, body, spirit integration and what that,
Sure.
when we say
Yeah.
that, that can even sound a little bit intimidating or unfamiliar to
Right.
people. Would you share your
Yeah.
unpacking of
Mhm.
that?
Yeah. Well, for me, I was 10 years out of grad school and I started crying out for more. I'm like, God, I'm reading these scriptures that talk about you heal all diseases. And I'm a good therapist, but not everyone walks out of my, room healed. And I started crying out for more. And that's when God led me to inner healing. And the first few sessions I did kind of fumbling through it with my clients, we saw crazy breakthrough. The first time I ever did an inner healing session was with one of my clients who had severe anorexia, and she walked out of that session completely healed. So that began the dialogue with God. God, what's this? Because I didn't learn this in grad school. I didn't learn this in integration of faith and psychology. And what he told me was, Margaret, you talk a lot about me in your sessions with people, but you haven't had them talk directly to me. And that's when I realized I was more mind body, right? Medication, understanding the body and how it relates to things like depression and anxiety, and doing like cognitive behavioral therapy, even biblical cognitive behavioral therapy. But I didn't understand the spirit. I didn't understand that we are spirit, and the depth of us communicates spirit to spirit. And so I didn't even know to bring that in, and so God began to show me, and he started with 1 Thessalonians 5, I pray that you may be made whole, body, mind, and spirit. And he who is faithful will do it. So first he had me break down, understand body, soul, and spirit, and also that he will do it. Because I spent years getting credentials, and, it's very much about being competent as a psychologist, right? Do no harm as a psychologist. And God was like, I love your tools. I brought you this. I wanted you to learn this. And now I want you to get out of the way. And I want you to let me in the room and let me do the healing work. And so to me, that's an understanding of the spirit, that we are spirit, and that he searches the deep things of our spirit that we're not even completely aware of. And while I try to discern the core and the root, he gets to it in a heartbeat. So, and as I studied 1 Thessalonians, I began to break it down. Like, we are all connected, but breaking it down is helpful for understanding. So the body is the easiest for us to understand, obviously, right? And then the soul in the Greek is the word where we get psychology from, psyche, or psychology, which is the study of the mind, the will, and the emotions. And so he showed me, Margaret, psychology is that. It's all soul. It's sitting with someone, helping them figure out what they think, what they feel, and why they do the things that they do, right? And why, as Paul said, why do I do the things I don't want to do, and the things I want to do, I don't know how to do? Well, Paul needed a therapist to sit with him and say, let's sort out your feelings, your thoughts, your behaviors, your values, the lies that you believe, right? All of those things. But then the spirit is the essence of who you are. And so I used to understand something like suicidality. I understood it mind, body. Ooh, there's some, dysregulation in the body, in the neurochemicals, and there's really some bad thoughts about yourself and life. But now I look at suicidality completely different. I'm like, oh, when you don't want to live, that's a direct attack against the essence of who you are.
Yeah.
Right? That's just as much spiritual as it is physical or biological. So ultimately, I think that we were created with, our spirit to be in submission to God's spirit, and our mind and our body to kind of serve our spirit. And what I see in the counseling room is some dysfunction in that order. So for example, if someone has an addiction, the cravings of their body and that addiction, that very, real physical aspect of their addiction is taking over. And so their spirit and their soul, they don't really look like themselves. They don't act like themselves because the drives of the body have taken over. Or you see someone, it can also work the other way, where you're over-spiritualized. You're in your head, you overthink, and you're overriding the wisdom of your spirit and your body because of that overthinking. So ultimately, it's helping people understand you're a body, soul, spirit. When you come in with an issue that you want to work on, what are the issues connected to the body? What's connected to your soul and personality? What's connected to your spirit? And then addressing, all three. It's just so powerful to see. And really, really fun. I love it.
It sounds holistic to me.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal, right?
Because we are body, soul, and spirit, body, mind, spirit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
powerful.
Mhm.
And
Well,
makes a lot of sense that those things, I'm glad they're coming together. And, even it seems like a lot of people in the evangelical church world feel like there's no need. I mean, I'm glad to hear that you're seeing that there is some background or need for the psychology
Mhm.
aspect, but a lot of folks have this, well, Jesus took care of it all at the cross, and so I should be fine now because I've,
Yeah.
and that's just not the realistic experience of people.
Right.
They don't,
Right.
that's not manifested in their day to day, because there's still stuff that we're working out on
He
this
took
side.
care of
So
physical healing at the cross too, but we still have physical ailments,
that's
right?
true. Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah.
and that's a mystery too, that some of it I found that the older I get, the more I'm like, you know what, I'm letting go of my certainty because I don't know. And I've
Yeah.
tried all these
Mhm.
formulas and I've done the step by step, I've done it all, and it's still there,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
someone's still suffering. But I've been loving your Instagram post, Dr. Margaret. I've been following you for a couple years. In fact, I bought your book, The Shine Like Stars, gosh, I don't know,
Mhm.
years ago at Bethel, actually, when we were visiting out there. But I would love to talk some about the nervous system and some about trauma responses, because it's a trendy topic, but
Mhm.
I want to kind of de-trend it and go, why is it trendy?
Yes.
And it's important, but then people read one little post and they're like, okay, I know what to do. But help us just understand a little bit, even about, you mentioned about overcoming overwhelm, excuse me, and why that's important for the regulating of the nervous system. So why is nervous system work, and why is that even trending? Why is that such a powerful entry point for
Yeah.
emotional and spiritual healing?
Yeah. So I'm so privileged to have been in the field before it became, trending, as you're
Mm-hmm.
saying. And that wasn't just in social media. That was also in my world as a psychologist. It wasn't until maybe the last 10 years that I was even hearing in my industry about the nervous system. And before that, how we dealt with trauma was completely different
Mm.
and probably only effective for a smaller portion of trauma or people living with trauma. And then when we really came to this fuller understanding of the nervous system, it's a complete game changer. I wish I knew what I know now, you know, 20 years ago, but we weren't quite there yet. So we are body, mind, and spirit. And one of the fundamental, foundational aspects of how God created us is our nervous system. And that nervous system is there to protect us. So anytime we talk about trauma, anytime we talk about stress, depression, any of those things, that's all a physical system that's trying to protect you from what you are perceiving as overwhelming, stressful, whatever is a threat, basically. And so, like the thermostat in your house, you want it at, I like 70 degrees. Like that's where I'm happy, right? Not too hot, no too cold, just right, right? And that's when I'm at my best. I can think clear, I'm active, I can do all the things. Your nervous system is the same way. It's always trying to keep you in that beautiful, regulated state. But it's also designed that when stress increases, just like heat or, cold increases, that thermostat's going to kick on to keep the temperature regulated. And in the same way, the nervous system kicks on whenever we perceive a threat. Keyword is perceive.
Mm-mm.
And what does it do? It mobilizes all the energy in your body to help you take care of whatever it is. And it could be anything from, oh, I got to pay my bills or do my taxes today, to, maybe something a little more intense. But when we get disconnected from our nervous system, which unfortunately, the more technology we have, the busier our lives are, we don't have, we don't churn the butter anymore. you know, we don't do anything that
Mm.
slows us down and
Mm.
makes us just be in our body and be present and no other distraction. And because of that, our nervous systems are not always regulating as smoothly as they can be. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like it gets stuck on or it gets stuck off. Stuck on is when you kind of feel revved and a little anxious and like you have to kind of just keep doing. And stuck off is when you want to do things, but you're like, why am I struggling to get off the couch? And those are just all markers that the nervous system, it's like the capacity is too great. And so it's trying to protect you in some way. So it's either kind of slowing everything down or it's speeding everything up because you're perceiving a threat and it's trying to give you the energy to take care of it. But when you're not aware of that, that energy just sits there without being, used appropriately. Does that make sense?
You said no one churns butter anymore. And that would get us to slow down. Doing something physical to slow us down, which I am in that camp of needing to go from, I don't need to do everything in 2x speed and do something that maybe I'm going to learn how to churn butter. Thank you for that, because it would force me to slow down. But can you talk about the different trauma responses and really linking that, of course, to you were talking about the nervous system and how we're either in this fast or we just freeze. And let's explore that deeper about the different trauma responses and how we can know if we're stuck in one of them. And then what can we do once we recognize that?
Yeah. So there's this beautiful department in your brain called neuroception, and it's constantly scanning the environment like a surveillance camera, just constantly. And it's just looking for any perceived threat so that it can help you. And in any moment, if it perceives a threat, it tells the nervous system to kick on by mobilizing energy to take care of the situation, right? So neuroception decides which survival state you are going to go into. As much as I'd like to pick in that moment, you don't get to pick. It's unconscious and automatic. As you build capacity, you can have a little more control over that, but it's going to pick a survival state based on what it deems you need. So the survival states are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Or you can have complete collapse, or what we call shutdown. So fight is when your nervous system perceives that it would be better for you to be aggressive and fight for your safety. Flight is get out of here. Whatever costs, just leave. Freeze is an interesting thing. If fight and flight are gas, freeze is break, but it can also be a little bit of both. It can be gas break, and that's functional freeze, where you're going like gas, but the brake's on, right? So if you had gas and brake on, you're not going anywhere. So for example, for all my, and I'm one of them, for all my ruminators out there, my overthinkers, when you're stressed, think about that. That's gas. There's a lot going on in there, but it's brake. You're not going anywhere. You're not accomplishing anything. You're not even solving anything. You're just spinning, right? There can also just be freeze where you just kind of feel like you can't get motivated, you can't get going. And then complete collapse, shutdown, that doesn't happen as often. That's in cases where your system has decided we're preparing to die. There is no hope. Just shut it down. But that's pretty rare. So most people find themselves in fight, flight, freeze. And then fawn is this interesting kind of survival state where it's similar to freeze. It's a type of freeze where you quickly discern kind of who's the authority in the room and you acquiesce to that authority in order to be safe. So that can look like people pleasing, but then later you go, what? Why did I do that? For me, this happens when I go get my hair done and they do it wrong and I just go into a peeve and I give them a big tip and then I get in my car and I'm like, why did I do that? The minute I looked at my hair, I was like, this is horrible. But I smiled and I gave her a big, fat, juicy tip and walked right out. And then when it was safe, I know, you can relate, can't you? And then when it was safe, because I'm in my car,
That's so.
Then the anger came out. Yeah.
I've done that so many times with so many. Oh my God, I'm laughing over here. I'm crying. What, like, why? Help me. Like, why? Why do we do that? Help us. Because I know we're not the only ones here.
Because at some point, your nervous system associated threats with
Mm,
authority.
mm,
And you have to look at your own particular flavor of it. If you look back at all the times you did that. So for me, it's authority, but it's also authority that I'm entrusting to take care of me,
mm,
right? It's not okay to speak up. It's not okay. Like you
mm,
acquiesce to
mm.
authority. So if you have any of that, then but you have to look at your situation and notice the thread and go, hey, do I have any wounds around that? Do I have any sense of it wasn't safe to speak up and just say, I
Mhm,
don't like
mhm.
this? Yeah, no, that wasn't safe. Well, no wonder your nervous system has already associated threat with that. So, that's so then you
Mm.
fawn because that's safer. It's always protection. It's always your body's wisdom to protect you.
How do we then, I mean, that's such a exquisite example, because, or not wanting to say if your meal has been at a restaurant is served and it's not what you wanted. And I think that all of us, most of us can relate to what you're saying, hence our laughter. And as we recognize these
Mm-hmm.
things, how can we, what do we need to do to sort of start turning the ship around? And why is it important to turn the ship around?
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I did, and I'm thinking about the last time this happened to me, where I asked for 1.5 inches, and she took off
Oh
three
dear.
inches. Wow. Okay. So I get to my car, and I know enough to know. Wow, I went into
Mm,
fawn in there. Yeah, I know that I do that, especially in similar
mm-hmm,
situations. Do I go back in? I'm still sitting in the
mm,
parking lot. Do I go back in? No, I'm way too
mm,
dysregulated. You know what? I'm going to take care of myself first because my nervous system is still learning
mm-hmm,
about this, and then we'll see. So I get home, and now I'm feeling what my nervous system told me I wasn't ready to feel
hmm,
in the salon.
mm,
So now I'm letting myself because I'm aware, and I'm going, okay, I'm here. It's safe. And then my system
hmm,
started feeling
Mm.
anger. And then I went, okay, I'm glad my system is feeling safe enough to feel anger, A. And B, it's feeling like I'm not going to override you. So if you fall into that trap, it's probably because you override anger. So it's less about the hair and it's more about anger is
mm,
scary and I
mm,
override it. And I'm angry right now and I can't handle it. So my nervous system is, yeah, she can't handle it. So go into
Mm.
fawn. So then I have to go, okay, it's okay to feel anger, right? Whatever my lie is, I have to hold the truth and help my body go, you know what? It is safe. It's
mm-hmm,
safe to be angry. It's okay to be angry about that. And then allow myself to feel that. And then I had to help myself discharge all of that energy for fights that didn't get expelled because I just
mm,
suppressed it in the moment.
mm,
Wow.
So for me, it's that like
mm-hmm,
feeling
mm-hmm,
when you're angry, right? So I knew I needed some kind of
mm-hmm,
physical release. So one of my little hacks is I've got this little
mm-hmm,
trampoline, and it works like magic for me when I have an activation, especially anger, because I don't
mm,
love anger. So I get on my trampoline for a little bit, and that helps me expel some of that energy that was mobilized for
mm,
fights that really I just cut
mm,
off in the moment.
Yeah.
And now I can get back to a more regulated state. I'm still kind of upset. I'm not crazy about it, but I'm not dysregulated. That energy that was mobilized to help me has now been expended. And now in my clear frontal lobe, because I'm regulated, right? I'm back to 70. Now I can say, okay, Margaret,
mm,
what do we want to do about
Mm.
this?
Yeah.
I know that my history has said it's not okay for you to speak up, but I don't want to live that way anymore. And so how can we honor? you want to honor other people. She was a sweet lady. She wasn't trying to wreck your day. How can we honor her, but also honor this anger? And so, yeah, so I picked up the phone the next day and said, hey, this is what happened. This is really hard for me. What, and just let her know.
Unfortunately, you can't make hair grow fast. That's you have to wait it out.
Can't. But I did ask for my money back and got my money back.
Yeah. And so it sounded like you went through, like, your fawn response almost shut down your fight response. It like in the chair or immediately after.
So remember, fawn is a form of freeze, and the nervous system goes to freeze when it decides, I can't fight, but I can't run away. So I'll just kind of freeze. Right? So that's what I did. Couldn't fight because in my mind, anger is scary and bad. And she's a nice lady, but I'm not just going to run away. And so I just kind of froze. Like I remember looking up and seeing it. And I remember just kind of like being frozen and just kind of going through the motions. So thank you very much. Here's your tip. Leave the thing. And then, so when you're in freeze, when you thaw, you may find some flight or some fight that was overridden initially that you then have to kind of.
And it's interesting, just kind of bringing this to a point, not really a point, but you said that you got in the car, and at that point would not have been wise to go back in to speak to her because your nervous system was dysregulated. But I wonder if something like road rage, for example, or where someone is totally they get triggered, the trauma response comes out, maybe fight, and then in that dysregulated state, they're doing something that is outrageous or not right or mean or angsty.
Sure.
But if you said you got home and then you have a practice of bringing your nervous system back into regulation, and what happens if people don't find a way to expel that energy, as you were talking about?
So when you're not aware of your nervous system and you don't know how to regulate if you're dysregulated, then that energy just stays in your body. So one of the things I teach people to do when we first start, 101 nervous system work is the first step is to number one, get out of your head and connect with your senses, because your senses is what helps you discern what's happening in your body. And you just do a body scan. And I say, just notice all the areas, especially the muscles, because that's where you tend to hold any, unspent stress energy. And notice anything that feels off, tight, pressure, anything that feels off. And they do this body scan. We do this every Friday in these Sophia sessions I offer. You do the body scan and they're like, oh yeah, I didn't realize it until I scanned my body, but I've got all this pressure in my chest, or I've got all this tension in my, back or neck. And it's, well, welcome to where you went into fight or flight, but you didn't we call it a cycle or an arc. You start at 0, it gets to that 10 out of 10, but then it comes back down the other way and you come back to rest. You didn't complete that rest. Or another metaphor I like is a song. The song got pressed play, and the song started going, but instead of the song having a beginning, a middle, and an end, it just got paused. And all that energy is just sitting there, and you just located where it's sitting. So that's the first step, is being able to do a body scan, notice where you tend to hold trapped stress energy, and then you can go through the process of releasing it.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking about functional freeze and the brake and the gas on at the same time, the metaphor that or the visual that I had of that is like at the end of a runway when you're getting ready to take off and the brakes are on in the airplane, but they rev the engines really high. And then they release the brake, and then you've got this extra thrust going forward. So it seems to me that is maybe a way to picture that, where you've got all of this potential energy and yet you've got the brakes on, and then you release the brakes. And that's when really bad things can happen if you don't regulate, because then you do kind of shoot out of the out of the pipe.
It could, yeah. You could just kind of freeze, 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 and
Yeah.
then, yeah. I have this video of these children on a ride at the amusement park. And, like any children, they're cocky at first. They're like, let's go, and it's one of those rides that just
Yeah.
drops. And you watch them go through
Mm,
all those stages of survival. So they kind of flip off, but one of the girls immediately goes into freeze. She
mm,
just freezes, and it almost catatonic. And then when she starts to kind of come back, she starts to thaw out of that freeze. She immediately gets angry and she goes, "Get
mm,
me off of this
Wow.
thing!"
Hmm.
Right? And the other girl, you kind of see the opposite. She's kind of in flight, and then she kind of calms down, and then they both are completely dysregulated in what they're saying, because now we're
mm.
at a 10 out of 10. My emotions, the cortisol, the adrenaline, and the two of them very genuinely start reciting like their last will and testament to each other, like,
Wow.
tell my mama that I
Oh,
love her, and da 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 da
oh,
da. And so it's so
yeah.
real. And this was from an amusement park ride. So the brain doesn't know the
Mm,
difference. The brain is just trying to help you. And the brain's, what's this? Right? And then it immediately goes into it. So the key really is, okay, when you look at them separate, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, they make sense. You're like, okay, I get that. I get that now. The categories make sense to me. Now your job is to live your life and notice when you get dysregulated. Notice what fawn looks like for you, what
mm,
fight looks like for you, what flight looks like for you. Get to know it, start
mm,
cataloging it, because it's different for different people based on your personality, based on, I'm a pretty easygoing person. It takes a lot to get me angry. So it kind of makes sense that I'd go into
mm,
fawn more often than someone who is much more comfortable being big and bold, right? So, as you get to know what your nervous system does, that's really where the power is. It's not, I once had a client say to me, or actually was on a podcast, and they were like, so how do we get to the point where we never get activated into fight, flight, or freeze? I'm like, no, no, no. That's that's
when you're
not the
Yeah.
goal.
dead.
You'd be
Yeah.
a robot. Right, right. That's
Mm,
not bad at all. It's can you get more connected? And then this is my goal. My goal is, can you increase your capacity? What's your
mhm,
capacity now? And if you have past trauma or wounds, or like my anger thing, like my capacity is limited because of some of my experiences with anger being
mhm,
not safe, right? So I have to work on building my capacity. So now, can I stay present? The more present I am, the more I can regulate. That's really the goal of nervous system work, is building more and more capacity versus trying to, I don't know,
Hmm.
override.
what if we recognize people that, and Kathy, you're going to interrupt me, or I actually just let me know if you have a question. And I can't see you, Kathy, because I have her blown up big.
No worries.
But the more I've gotten to know these different trauma responses, I have been able to recognize more. Oh my gosh, I'm totally in functional freeze right now. But I recognize there's
Mhm.
some people that in my life that I can see have been living out of functional freeze for most of their life or a lot of their life. And for those that are totally unaware, and it's not a shame thing, it's just that maybe they haven't even recognized this or heard this kind of truth. How can we, and me too, like, even recognize if I have been operating most of my life out of one of these particular trauma responses, and it is a neuropathway rut? What help
Yep.
us,
Yep.
first of all, even how to recognize if someone's been living sort of all of their life out of one of these trauma responses, and then what we can begin to do
Yeah.
to shift out of that.
Yeah. If you've had it for a long time, it's hard to realize because you just think it's normal for you. But for example, if you've lived a lot of your life in functional freeze, there's a couple things. It could be, for example, if you find yourself going, why do I feel like I just don't have as much energy as other people? I look at other people my age, my stage of life, and they just seem to bounce back faster. They seem to have more motivation. I want to do these things, but it's freeze is one of my defaults. And I'll often say, before I could realize I was in freeze, it was like my body just won't let me. So what I didn't realize was, wow, that's a big default for me. I'm in functional freeze a lot. And what I think is lazy and why can't I motivate myself is actually my nervous system is protecting me. And it tends to do that. There does tend to be one that your body kind of tends to default to more than others. And my default is more freeze. And how do I know that? Well, because when I look at the symptoms of freeze, wow, yeah, I experience that a lot and often feel like, why can't I get myself going? So that would be an example of freeze. If you're more on the fight or flight, that's kind of more of an edgy, irritable, when a client comes to me and go, I'm here because, you know what, I lash out a lot. I don't mean to, but I'm on the edge a lot. I snap. And I don't like it. And I do it a lot with my kids. And I don't really understand why. It's, they're stuck in fight or flight, right? Or I'm go, go, go. And I just push through. And I don't, like, the idea of being still freaks me out. Like, I just have to keep going. I'm afraid something bad will happen if I don't keep going. That's someone who's stuck in flight. And they just don't know it. And I love to tell people, like, oh, that's your nervous system. No shame, no, like, your nervous system is just, it's been conditioned now, because you've been doing this for a while, that this is more your norm. But we can change that actually rather quickly with some intention, with some learning, with putting, connecting the dots, and then doing nervous system, learning simple regulation tools, and finally allowing that system. It's literally like flipping a switch on your thermostat. You want it in auto, right? You want it in auto. But sometimes, somehow it gets flipped into on, and you're like, why is the fan blowing all the time? Well, because somehow it got switched to on, which means that fan is blowing all the time, 24/7. So all we need to do is help the body do what it wants to do, which is flip that switch and get back to auto regulation. But if you don't know that, you'll do all the work and you'll be like, it's still not. So I have sometimes people come to me and they're very savvy and they've done the emotional work. They've done the inner healing work, and there's, Margaret, something's still off. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. I'm so proud of you. You've gone after the spirit work. You've gone after the soul work. What you didn't know was that your body's still stuck in the past. And here's some really simple tools, and we're going to get your body unstuck from the past. So that's the beauty of nervous system work, is it tends to be the game changer. So now I go after it first. I'm like, let's go after that first because it's the foundation.
Yeah.
Let's go after that first because it's the foundation. You have to go after. Now I can't imagine doing therapy or even inner healing without it.
Right.
That's good.
Right. Starting from that emotionally regulated state.
Well, unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties and a timing issue that we lost our guest, but we are going to have Margaret back, and we will put some information on how to learn more about her in the show notes. And we'll definitely be circling back for another conversation with her.
Yeah.
We were not anywhere near finished.
No, she already agreed to part two.
So much more to be said. And we do hope that you got some really great nuggets out of this one, even though we didn't have a nice, pretty closure on it. But technology sometimes is not our friend. So, all right, there she is for very quick. But we were just kind of doing a little wrap up, but we definitely want to have you back. Is there a place where we can send some folks to get more information about you? You have a website, correct?
Yeah, the best way is either on Instagram, DM me on Instagram, which is at Margaret Nagib, or my website is thedunamisproject.org. So
wonderful. And we'll talk more about that in the next episode. Okay. Thank you so much, Margaret. It's been a delight. And we look forward for finishing the conversation
next time I'll
at
make
another
sure we
time.
have plenty of time.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for listening so much. And again, if you haven't had a chance to leave us a 5-star review, we would love it to hear your feedback. Appreciate hearing from you. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
Thank
Thank you for joining us on the Face to Face podcast. For more resources and information, please visit face2facenetwork.org.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review. It helps others discover tools for deeper connection and lasting freedom. We will see you next time.